Okay, here we have a lesson on second half of 7.4. We're solving polynomials by factoring out what we call a GCF, greatest common factor. So when we do the problems, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to factor first so that we can solve. Remember, our equation needs to say something times something equals 0. So that's the general form that we're looking. And you can see in this first problem that says solve, notice it says something plus something. So that's a problem. So that's why we need to factor first. All right, what is a GCF between c squared and 5c? And hopefully you see that there is a common factor of c in both of those. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to park that c in front. We're going to draw a set of parentheses. And now you're going to ask yourself, okay, c squared divided by c is c. And likewise, 5c divided by c is just 5. So now you can see I'm in a better spot here because I have something times something equals 0. So now one of these two somethings has to be 0. Either this is 0 or this is 0. So my answer is c equals 0 or c equals -5. All right? Example B. A little bit more complex, but again, we're looking at for a GCF. Again, this doesn't say times, it says plus. So what is a GCF between these? First of all, very important that you pull the variable out. At this point, it is convenient if you see that they're both divisible not only by 2, but they're divisible by 4. So if you can take out the greatest common factor from each one, that's the best. So we're going to pull a 4x out. And then we're going to put a plus sign in between there because there was a plus sign up there. And now we ask ourselves, if I take 4x divided by x squared, that gives me just x. Okay? Next, 12x divided by 4x. The x's cancel. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay. Finally, now I just answer. Look at my two factors. If 4x equals 0, well, we could ignore the 4 there because, again, 4 times x is 0. 4 can't be 0, so x has to be 0. So we'll just shorten that up and say x equals 0. And hopefully you can solve this other one in your brain, and you don't have to write it out. If you need to, go ahead. But adding -3 to both sides gives you x equals -3. So here are the two solutions. All right, forgot the word or there. This last problem, okay, looks strange for one big reason, and that's because notice on either side I do not have a 0. Okay, and that's a problem. We need a 0 somewhere. So, job 1, make it equal to 0. We have two choices. I could move the 8a there, or I could move the -10a squared to there. Since it's easier to work with positive numbers, hopefully you see that adding 10a squared to both sides will give us positive numbers, and that's what we like. It makes it just a little bit easier to solve when there's more positives than negatives. All right, so here we got my magical 0. And on the right side I have 10a squared plus 8a. please don't add those things together. They're unlike terms. One's got an a squared, one's got an a. Now again, I look at both of them and I say, what is divisible into both of them? What can I divide them both by? Well, notice they both have an a. And notice I can divide them both by, not 4 this time, but just 2. All right, so I'm going to rewrite this. Since I'm running out of room here, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to say 0 equals, and I'm going to take the 2a, put that in front, and now again I ask myself what's left after I pull out that 2a. So 10a squared divided by 2 is 5a. And likewise, looking at 8a divided by 2a gives me a 4, and notice the a's cancel. Okay. Finally, solving for a, if 2a is 0, then a has to be 0, so there's one answer. 0 equals a, or a equals 0. And then in this next one, it looks a little bit more complex. I can't solve that mentally. So I'm going to say 5 plus 4a equals 0. And now we solve. And so a equals negative 4 over 5. All right, we've got our 2 answers for that problem. It's kind of a trickier problem because, again, it's not solved for 0. So we're doing the same thing we did yesterday, except for this time you just got to factor out your GCF